Comes from people.
Because when you click there, the sound should be coming automatically. They have already moved us.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for those who joined in early in advance. I think we just give them maybe 5 minutes because I can see there are a few people who are still trying to connect, and then we can kick off. I see our main presenter is on already. I can see Tom. Welcome, Tom.
Thank you.
And I just want to start off the day by bringing apologies from Mohammed. the emergency that he's been dealing with, he actually had a sick relative who unfortunately passed on. So he won't be joining us today.
Il ne va pas nous rejoindre.
See that the interpretation is not on the channels yet either, because we can hear it openly.
Can I be assigned to?
The person is sorting that out. Thank you, Tom.
Tom, good morning.
Hey, how are you?
This is Kabul after a long time.
Nice
How
to
are
see you
you?
again. Good.
All right. And how is the Turing Center?
It's good. It's
and the training department?
Good. We migrated all online right now.
Yeah. I mean, all of us are only surviving virtually.
Hopefully soon we can come back to presence.
I mean, if of online, Solicom and the others, I mean, previously everybody was resisting, but today is the order of the day for all of us.
It's true.
All right. Good to see you.
Good to see you too.
Thank you.
Just checking, is the interpretation okay now? I think it's...
If it is done, then we are not getting, I mean, the echo is not coming out. So I think if they are doing the interpretation, then it's okay.
Okay. As I was just saying...
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, I was just passing a message from Brother Mohammed.
Yes.
The emergency he was dealing with yesterday is he had a sick relative who unfortunately passed away yesterday night.
Yeah.
So the burial is today, and him being in the village, he will not be able to join us today. So the program will have some changes today. Inviolata will be facilitating the session that Mohammed was supposed to facilitate. And then Kabu will be giving the closing remarks on behalf of ACTRA.
Yes, I spoke with him.
Kabu, we can't hear you. Kabu, we can't hear you.
Because that person.
We can't hear you, Kabu.
I don't know what is the problem. My mic is on.
No, it's your connection. You keep hanging.
Yeah, because I don't have electricity. I'm surviving on my mobile phone. Can you do not have power in our area?
No, we can't hear you, Kabu. You keep on hanging. It's not the power, it's your internet connection.
Internet connection.
Yeah, but I can see was Yazidi. I'm seeing him. Yazidi, can you see me?
Yes, we can see you, but when you talk, you keep on hanging.
Okay. Maybe I need to buy some credit. Let me buy some credit.
Maybe you need to remove the video, because the video actually overloads the system.
True.
Yes, I have removed the video now. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, but we'll see, because it only comes when you're talking, then we will be hearing like a scratched CD.
Okay, let me try to buy some credit.
Okay, so in the meantime, we have quite a good number to start off, and I will pass the mic to Sister Inviolata.
Okay, thank you very much, Airtuk Executive Secretary, Sister Caroline Mugala. And once again, on behalf of all of us, we send our condolences to the family of Brother Muhammad. These are really very difficult times. Anyhow, welcome and good morning once again. We are so happy and humbled by your commitment since we started on a Monday. It's not easy to work like this, particularly for the trade union movement, because some of the key pillars of solidarity is that we are supposed to meet and look at each other eye to eye and give each other those very vibrant handshakes so that we feel for each other that we are in the movement. But we have managed to reach to the last day of our virtual webinar series, regardless of some of the challenges that we were facing with technology. At the moment, a good number of us are logged on. I want to welcome Tom, who is a colleague of mine in Turin. He's the manager of a program that we have in Turin, the Learning Innovation Program. So all the innovations that you have been some of our participants on our virtual online courses, the laboratory for some of these new innovations are being brewed, so to speak, in Tom's program. Tom, you have before you the leadership, the affiliates of our constituencies coming from East Africa and the Horn of Africa. And within ACTRAF, that sub-region is coordinated by Kabu, a colleague whom you already know from his work with us in Turin. The virtual seminar is bilingual because we have English-speaking also French speaking. And I will want to know when you take the floor whether you are going to speak in French or in English. But anyway, the presentation that Tom is going to give us today will be available on through Airtuk and Hack2 Secretariat. So it will be accessible to all the participants. Let me give a little bit of a recap just for 2 minutes so that it will give a context to what Tom is going to talk about. The session today is very short, unlike the past 2 days where we were having 2 sessions for 3 hours. This session is just going to be 1 hour, 30 minutes. The meaning of foresight thinking theory. What does this involve? What is the meaning? Should trade unions also know how to do foresight thinking? How is foresight thinking important and relevant for the future of trade unions? And at what level of trade union operations should foresight thinking be embedded? We were talking involved in education and training activities. We also need to plan strategically so that we remain relevant for now and for the future. So within our context,
dans notre contexte en Afrique,
I am hearing French now. Maybe check our technician happening. There's a French interference.
rero ubu bica byoroheje kijya cyubwira gitega ngo woze so formera ko nicyo cyukiswe emategeko nawe arakica yatubariye tuyakoresha neza rumara tako yihereza ari kijyane cyaka tuvuga ngo ayihose nawe ko ratanga raporo finance azobe posta muri cyo wanzo gihe ducunyereke byo bintu ico gikora gihe ducutamba
just one. Is it okay now?
Yeah, with you.
Sorry. It jumped. It changed him to English instead of French. Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So I was given Tom to be our speaker for today. On the first day, we had Professor Yelevisa, who was also talking to us some of the possible future scenarios for trade unions based on the study that he has undertaken, and that was a global study. And he left to his studies, there are 4 possible future scenarios for trade unions, one of which is marginalization. It can be a possibility if we don't harness the context that the future has presented to us and adapt to the future and stop thinking out of the box. So marginalization was one scenario that was tabled for our reflection by Professor Yelevisa. The second one was dualization. The third one was a replacement, where he was talking about trade unions. If they are no longer fit for purpose for now and in the future, they also stand a risk of being replaced by other formations. Maybe this can be civil society organizations or NGOs. We don't know, but he left this as a possible future scenario for us to think about. The fourth scenario that was more encouraging, and which most of us in this seminar so far think that could be a possible future scenario, the right scenario for us is the one for revitalization or renewal, where he was saying that you still have the chance as trade union organizations to still remain relevant, but this requires us now, it's urgent, to begin to explore innovative tactics and strategies, including coalitions that will strengthen trade unions to remain strong, relevant, democratic, and representative organizations. He also underlined the need to be representative because we have new forms of work and new forms of workers that would also need to be organized and embraced in our structures. So Tom, this is where we are. We want to give 30 minutes so that you could underline the meaning of the concept of foresight thinking theory, and also maybe give us some examples of how has this been useful and why trade unions should do foresight thinking, so that we get out of the challenges that are presenting at the moment due to many other issues that have been mentioned, of which COVID pandemic accelerated some of these challenges. I'm sure you are going to share a PowerPoint presentation from your end.
Yep.
And,
thanks a lot, Inviolata, for the introduction and sketching the context, and good morning to everyone. I will do my presentation in English, mais je peux répondre aux questions en français comme tu veux. Donc I can switch languages so I can accommodate both languages out there. But for the time being, I'm just starting in English. And probably when I arrived here at the webinar, when I was still without the video like this, people were thinking, Tom Wambeke, that sounds like an African name. And then suddenly I put my video on, and then, oh, there's someone different that we expected there. But apparently Wambeke has a lot of African connotations. The Wambeke, son of the Becker family. In every African country I come, oh, something is falling here. don't worry. In every African country that I'm coming from, always there's an explanation where my name comes from, but my name is coming from a very small village in Belgium. And as Inviolata mentioned, I'm here working in the north of Italy, in Turin, together with our colleagues of ACTRAF in the training center. And yeah, the journey that I want to walk today with you is that Foresight journey, because and I hope you can see my presentation or the slides that I have prepared for this. Are they visible? Yes, okay.
We can see your slides.
Perfect. So for the question here is, I mean, you have been discussing about 4 different future scenarios, marginalization, dualization, replacement, or the preferable one, revitalization. This in itself is already a result of Foresight thinking. You know, this is already using futures, let's say scenarios, futures tools. And my quick presentation, future scenarios, what other future tools can we use to prepare ourselves to anticipate on the future, not to predict the future, because that's impossible. And COVID might be the best example, because who of us could have predicted such a big, let's say, disaster? Nobody predicted it, but suddenly it was out there. And it gives us also a little bit the feeling that we need to prepare ourselves better for unexpected futures, and Foresight is actually a good remedy. So let me start with, as I said, introduce myself already. This is the quote that really drives my own personal, let's say, journey as I work in an innovation unit. This is written in a language that is unreadable, but everyone can read it. It's coming from Stephen Hawking, and he says, intelligence is the ability to adapt to change. And that is what also Foresight will be a lot. So what I would like to do in the coming 20-25 minutes is do a quick introduction to Foresight, then see, okay, you have scenarios. How can you, as trade unions, with your constituents, co-create probable, possible, plausible, and maybe even better preferred futures, and how can you prefer? And then maybe if we have some time for discussion, I also want to share some lessons learned, because we have been doing Foresight in the past 5 years, and it's quite interesting. And I'm going to start with a quote from a famous futurologist, someone who specialized in Foresight, and he says, if we always do what we have always done, we will get what we've always got. This is just a kind of reflection that I make, because the situation around changes in all possible ways. It could be political, could be environmental. The recent floodings here in Europe are a good example of that. It could be anything. But the thing, if we are going to use the old recipes, or if we're going to use the usual way of reacting to these changes, can we expect, let's say, better results? It's a first question that I have for you. Specifically, if I look at, you want to go into a scenario of revitalization, probably we will need fresh perspectives to get into the revitalization. And that maybe also Foresight could help. Another quote coming from Jack Welch, he says, when the rate of change outside an organization is greater than the rate of change inside, the end is near. Also something to reflect about. And the problem is when we introduce new things in organization, new perspectives, then always what we get, and this is a typical human thing, we get a little bit of resistance. That might be resistance vis-a-vis technology, that might be resistance vis-a-vis an organizational change. So we will have to take into account a lot of different factors out there if we want to also translate Foresight or futures thinking into action. I'm going to do a little exercise with myself right now, because I'm listening to another Foresight specialist, Jim Dater. And he says, if you want to make a useful statement about the future, if you look at it, it should at first seem strange or ridiculous. And what does he mean with that? Well, I was invited here to reflect about, or together with you, about the future scenarios. As well, in order to look at the future, you need to look at the past. So what I did is basically, I looked at future quotes that were done 100 years ago about the future. And it's actually interesting to see what people were thinking at that time about the future. That's not that long ago, 100 years, even it's a little bit less for some of the quotes. I'm going to show you some reflections of people about the future at that time. The first one is about the chief engineer from the British Post Office, and he states in 1878, the Americans have need of the telephone, but we do not. We have plenty of messenger boys. This was like one quote done in the past. Then there's another one, a lawyer that is working at Henry Ford's motor company, and he says, the horse is here to stay, but the automobile is only a novelty, a fad. So also was already a reflection of how people were thinking about future mobility. This one is interesting also. It's coming in 1830 from a medical doctor. He says, rail travel at high speed is not possible because passengers unable to breathe would die of asphyxia, which is a kind of a disease. And this is maybe the most famous one. And this was not even 100 years ago. This was done in 1943. Thomas Watzmann, an intelligent person, the chairman of the IBM, he says, I think there's a world market for maybe only 5 computers. So just look around what that prediction actually did not come true at all because the changes were so fast. And maybe a last one, because you could say these are people that were not aware. This is an extremely intelligent man in front of you, Albert Einstein. In 32, he says, there's not the slightest indication that nuclear energy will ever be obtainable. It would mean that the atom would have to be scattered at will. So as I said, we return 100 or 50 years back. We listen to people, what they predict about the future. And if we look at what the future or the present is right now, it's basically the future is not what it was supposed to be. So I'm asking yourself, if you would have to think now ahead in about not 100, but 50 years of time, what would be your historical quote about, let's say, the future of trade unions? Because I only used examples here. Most of them were on technologies. As I said, we could do the exercise on many other things. And these type of exercises are exactly the exercises that you do in Foresight workshops, labs, or journeys. You ask a question, what if? And this is like a first quick exercise as a kind of an icebreaker that I wanted to use. But there's more to that. I mean, it's much more serious than this, because usually when you consider the future of trade unions, you're starting to see, okay, in which world are we living right now? And I'm sure that in the discussions that you have had, you actually discussed, you're confronted with all major structural changes, you know, in the drivers that actually influence your world. In Foresight, we said these are the 5 factors. These are economical factors, political factors, environmental factors, social factors, technological factors, and they are basically the drivers of the whole situation, whether it's about a just transition towards a greener society, or whether it's about demographic change, or is it about the rising income qualities. The problem with Foresight is that you're confronted with very complex problems, and it's not that easy to just find like a technical solution. Even whatever scenario you would like to think in a revitalization story, you will need to address all these complexities. Secondly, in your workshop, all the problems that you have discussed, from workers' representation towards the decline of membership, these are all what we would call wicked problems. And for example, on the decline of membership, this is a challenge that is multifaceted. It's not a technical problem, otherwise it would have been solved already. There's no clear solution. There are a lot of unforeseen outcomes. It involves changing behaviors. There's a lot of different factors that are interconnected, and it's socially. As we said, it's interesting to apply Foresight because it creates us new perspectives to look at things. And before I'm going to show you some of these Foresight methodologies, I wanted to urge you, the last thing I want to say is, like, we have to get a kind of attitude to look at the same phenomenons in very different ways, because we are used to wear always the same glasses. I wear glasses myself, and maybe to illustrate it with one quote, if all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. And this is a bit the same with the way we are looking at some of the problems. The problem also is that we always need to act and react very fast in this kind of changing circumstances. And the other problem is that when we think about the future, our futures are very limited towards the next biennium, towards the next 2 years, towards the next project plan. There's not a lot of time to reflect about the long-term future. When was the last time that you were thinking about 50 years from now? This is something where foresight gives you different and interesting perspectives. Now, just before I dive into the different methodologies, you're going to ask, why is he showing me now this kind of picture of a dinosaur bird? I don't know if there are dinosaur specialists here in the group because I forgot the name of the bird. But what I want to show you here is an innovation or a creativity pattern, which is extremely important, and it's called acceptation. And going to translate it very simply, it's when you look at the wings of this bird, if you look at the history of this bird, the history of his evolution, the wings were originally meant for the regulation of the temperature in his or her body. And throughout the evolution, throughout the changing circumstances around the bird, he adapted towards the change, and the wings got a completely different function. He started to use the wings to fly. So something that got a complete different function than it was originally used for, we call that a kind of an acceptation phenomenon. And this way of thinking, we can do that in a lot of disciplines. So actually trying to think about a complete different situation in which something gets a new value. I'm going to illustrate it very practically with an example that you all probably know, maybe now a little bit less in COVID, but before COVID, we were quite often stuck in traffic jams. And you would say, being stuck in a traffic jam, it's strange that the engineers so far never found a solution for that, because it's not a technical problem, it's a wicked challenge. Otherwise, the traffic engineers would have solved it already. So here we need to also create fresh perspectives. And when you would apply acceptation, what would happen is you would go into a completely different environment to get new ideas. And what could be a different environment? For example, I'm going to move into the world of animals and biology, and I'm here with the ants, and ants are in the exact same situations. There are millions of ants there. They're all together, but there's no traffic jam. They actually move very fast. There's no collisions. And so these engineers started to study a completely new environment and got plenty of new ideas. They realized that the ants had sensors to anticipate on behavior. And in this way, the future of the car industry, for example, is moving towards a lot of these elements in terms of sensors, self-driving cars, etc. What I wanted to say is that when you move into a completely new perspective, you might also get completely new ideas that give you different ways of thinking about problems. And not only in the animal world, but for example, I'm going to give an old example. What you see here in front of you was the oldest invention, the book. You know, that was a technological innovation in 1500s that was invented by Gutenberg. And you would think Gutenberg, that must have been an expert in his field. Actually, he did acceptation. Gutenberg was living in an area where there was a lot of wine, and basically all his insights came from how the wine press was built. He extracted his insights from the wine press and actually has built the book press into that. And this is my invitation when we really want to think differently. We probably will need to get out of our box, take new perspectives. And how can we do that? That's basically by applying systematically foresight. And foresight always goes into 3 different phases. The first phase, what we do, we try to use methodologies to get a grip on the reality that we are working in. If you are looking at your own world, all these 5 different factors, all these phenomenons, this is the first thing when we can take a picture, when we fully understand the context around us. In a second stage, we're going to move together with a group of people. And here it's interesting, not like-minded people, but with a group of different perspectives in a very interdisciplinary way. We're going to try to do foresight exercises on some of the challenges that you have identified in the first phase. And then based upon those challenges, we're going to create different paths of change. You know, these 4 scenarios, that's an excellent result, but what are we going to do in each of these scenarios? How can we anticipate? How can we prepare? And for that, we also are using different, let's say, techniques and tools. Moreover, when we talk about the future, I already mentioned it to you, it's not about 2022, it's minimum about 2030, 2050 could also be longer forward. So it's long-term thinking. And yesterday I had a discussion with Anna Biondi on this aspect as well, when it's extremely important that there's something that we have to take for granted. We have to ask ourselves, are these long-term perspectives also leading towards a more inclusive and fair society? Because the values that underpin our exercises, they are the same. You have already mentioned them. It's solidarity, it's dialogue, and all the important principles that drive your work within the trade unions. What I'm going to do after this webinar also is share you a few toolkits where you can actually go through, because we have built them together with our colleagues in the ILO. And depending on what activity you want to do within your constituency, is it about helping your constituents to be aware of change? Is it about creating alternative futures? Is it about adapting the strategy that you're going in function of these different objectives? You can actually dive into the box and try to pick out some of the methods. These are all conversational methods that you can do together to move on further. As I said, it's usually a few steps. In the first step, for example, you try to identify your full environment. You don't do that like this because you want to see what is the change. We have card sets where there are more than 180 different signals of change that are happening across the world, also adapted to all the different regions where we work in. This is with these kind of Foresight cards that we work. We adapted them a little bit towards also the ILO so that all the different elements are integrated. These are the Foresight cards that we are with playing around with the different cards. You have basically a world that you have created, which you give a name, and then that is the starting point. The second starting point is what we're doing is you're going to benchmark a little bit towards what kind of trends, signals have, let's say, researchers or publications already appeared in this domain. Within the ILO, there's already a lot of things written about the future transitions of trade unions, but also outside the ILO. Here, this is a Foresight manual from the European Trade Union Institute, and there are many other things that already help you to frame, let's say, the challenges that you're facing. The horizon scanning is one of the methods in order to prepare yourselves for things. And then once we have this whole preparatory set of exercises done, we basically dive into practical exercises. And each of these practical tools has a name. The first one that I know is the future wheels example. It's an interesting tool because in the circle here, in the middle of the circle, you put a trend or an event, something that changes. And what you do then is you basically reflect about the change and you say, what is the consequence of that? And also, what is the consequence of the consequence? So you basically draw out consequences. I'm going to give you a very simple example. It has nothing to do with the trade union movement, but for example, the change of pervasive computing, which means that computers in the future won't exist as computers. They are just integrated in whatever we do, whether that's a mobile phone or whether that's even in our clothes. I mean, that's a very far future. But if you think about the consequences, one of the consequences, there will be an increased radiation impact, Wi-Fi. Okay, what is then the consequence of this consequence? That means that we need to create public spaces with radiation-free zones. And when we do a 360-degree exercise on all these consequences, we get a very rich picture of what the situation is and how we can prepare. And then we need to ask the situation, okay, do we want that or don't we want that? And as a trade union, how can we react and proactively, steer this or influence this in one way or another? So that was just one tool, and the toolkit that I'm sharing with you has plenty of these tools. This is another tool. It's called 3 Horizons, and we were working with our brothers and sisters in Egypt, in North Africa, Africa. For that, here we were doing an exercise on what's the future of youth employment in North Africa. And what we did first, the first horizon is basically together with all the different constituents, you map out what is currently happening right now. Once you have done that, we jumped towards the third horizon and we asked, okay, what could potentially happen in a far future, in a very far future out there? And then when we have the first scenario and the third scenario, we're trying to combine them in what we would call the second horizon. And that gives lead to incremental change, transformational things that we can do to change the situation. So that's just also another example of methods that we have used. There's someone. No, don't worry. Moving on, like what you have seen already is like the scenario building. The 4 scenarios that were basically created is also a good example on how we work with future scenarios. Oh, can you give me a second? Because there's someone with a lawnmower behind me. I just need to ask if he can stop. Otherwise, I cannot hear. Just one second. Sorry for that. Sorry about that. So the scenario building exercise is also one of the things, but then, okay, how are we going to act upon these scenarios? Like the revitalization scenario, interesting scenario. What can we do in the different ways? And these tools help you to guide, to create co-creation, to create dialogues together with your constituents. Maybe a last method that I wanted to share before we go into a more interactive conversation is imagine that revitalization is our preferred scenario. And okay, I'm going to put a backcasting method on it. And backcasting means, okay, I'm going to think about the future in 2030. And that's exactly dreaming about what would be the ideal situation in 2030 when everything is fully revitalized. What happened? So we try to make a picture of this fully revitalized trade unions picture. And we put that 30 or 20 years or 10 years even from right now. That's the vision, what we really want. And what we're going to do then in a structured dialogue in 3 or 4 phases, we're going to jump step by step back to the present. And when going step by step towards the present, you will find all the small steps what I basically need to do in order to move towards that kind of desired future. But we start from the preferred future and we rewind ourselves back to the present. Might sound now a little bit abstract, but when you apply these kind of methods, it gives you very practical information and practical actions that you can undertake together with your thing in light of the overall vision. And that's what many of these Foresight methodologies, they help you to do. They help you to align with different perspectives, because usually in the situations that you move into it, not only with your constituents, but you have to deal into tripartite situations. You have to deal with challenging things that might happen in your environment. There might be all kinds of it's very important to align all these different partners. So this is just another example of a method out there. So I'm moving in Violata. Maybe before I open up for questions, I also have some other things later to share about lessons learned. But what I want to say, to make it, for example, very concrete, I've seen a lot of discussions that happened on technology, and specifically when we thought in the centenary year on the future of work, there was a lot of technology discussions out here. For me, it's very important that these discussions are not monodimensional. It's not about just technological determinism that will say what the future will bring. When I would ask you this question, for example, I would ask you 2 questions. Are you optimistic about the future, or are you pessimistic about the future? And then a second question, do you think that technology will bring us closer together, or do you think that technology pushes us farther apart? Even in this group here, and we are with almost 40 people, everyone would position him or herself somewhere differently. I've never had a group that says, no, we're all fully optimistic and technology is bringing us closer together. It's more, positioning yourself in there. So if already on one driver, which is technology, we have so many different opinions. What about all the other drivers? And Foresight methodologies, they bring us together, helping us to understand what the other party is thinking, and then see how can we move from a scenario towards maybe, a perspective that we have not yet invented. I'm just flagshipping here this article from The Economist that had a whole article about how technology might help to revive organized labor. The trade unions are harnessing the same force that caused their decline. This is like the flagship title of this thing, but it's just, are there different ways to look at these phenomenons and what can we do in order to basically move forward? So that was in a nutshell, taking also the time into account. A little bit what Foresight is, what it can do. So I'm going to open up the floor for some questions. Maybe how does this connect with the 4 scenarios that you already have discussed? Where can it actually be useful for your future actions to move towards a revitalized trade union? I mean, many other questions can be asked also, as this is a concluding session, if I understood. And then maybe also, if there's a bit of time, I can also share you some lessons learned later, what you need to take into account when you start with that. So back to you, Inviolata.
Wow, thank you very much, Tom, for this brilliant overview. And I'm sure most of us, we are still trying to process the presentation, but I think most of us, we are also situating ourselves and our organizations, our trade unions in where are we or where do we fit in? There are a lot of entry points that have been flagged out by Tom through his presentation. But what is clearly coming out is that revitalization is not an event. It's a process that is composed of so many things. There are so many stages, there are so many tools, but at the end of the day, it's a theory that we can put into practice to revitalize our organizations. I would want to open the floor for comments, for questions, for reflections. And if there are organizations that are already using some of these tools and the foresight thinking theory, you can also maybe give us some perspectives on how are you doing it and how useful is it and what is the difference. I'm looking for hands, show of hands. In the chat room at the moment, there is nothing. And again, Tom has shared with us a number of quotations that we also need to reflect upon. One of them that is by Adam Abensky, where he was talking about you cannot do the same things and you expect a different result. So again, it's something that we need to reflect upon. If we want change, if we want to revitalize in a different context, do we still continue to do the same things and expect different results? Yesterday, there was so much talk about the need to organize new ways of organizing and servicing new members, providing them with benefits that are fit for purpose. But if we are going to use the same methods, strategies, tactics of organizing that we were using 20 years ago in this current century, are we going to get different results? These are some of the issues that came from the presentation. Then he also talked about some factors that we need to consider. Everything is not going to be smooth sailing when we are doing our foresight thinking. He talked about resistance to change. Are we also encountering situations where, as an organization, you are willing to change, you are adapting to change, but there are external and internal forces that are resisting the change? Let's also hear where are we situated in that context. In his last slide, he was talking about technology. It can be a driver for revitalization revitalization, but they can also be challenges. Over the 3 days, we were hearing about the concerns about the digital divide. When we are talking about technology, is it accessible to everyone equally? Then if it's accessible, do we also know whether all our members do you have the digital literacy that is required for them to work with all the digital tools that are available out there? So I'm summarizing because I'm still waiting for people to show by way of their virtual hands whether they want to take the floor. It's open, and the tendency is that towards the end of the session, we see more people showing their interest to take the floor. It's open now. I will invite first round 3 opportunities for people to take the floor. I've seen Caroline already. Naomi Chakanya from Actraf Turin, I've seen your hand. You are in the seminar, and you have done some work on trade unions and digitalization. After Caroline, I want you to also take 2 minutes to reflect on what this foresight thinking theory, how does it relate to the work that you have done on digitalization, and how trade unions can harness digital opportunities for revitalization and renewal. Okay, Caroline, you can take the floor. Then after Caroline, Naomi, then I'll also be checking whether there are other colleagues that would want to take the floor. Over to you, Caroline.
Thank you very much, Inviolata, and thank you, Tom. Yes, your name sounds like someone from my village. So I was very shocked to see a white dude on the screen, and I was like, oh, maybe he's just trying to set up a Zoom meeting for Wambeke. Thank you very much for that presentation, and I think it falls into line with what we've been discussing the past few days, and I'm very excited about the foresighting. I think this will be key when we discuss the issues around the trade union revitalization, because companies have been using this for time immemorial, over and over. They do foresighting, looking at what the company is doing currently now, where they want the company to be in the next 5 years, 10 years, whether it's human resource forecasting, whether it's technology forecasting. So the companies are already doing these things, employers are already doing these things. It's really important for us to actually embrace the whole concept of trade union foresighting. Where are we now in organizing? And the first day, there were a lot of sharing of experiences, the research that have been done. We have a glimpse of where we want to go, but I think the challenge we are having is the steps to take us there. We are very good at churning out very lovely research findings and all that, but I think the problem for us has been the implementation. Some of the unions do implement, but a majority of us, after a meeting like this, we go back home and we actually don't implement that. So I think it's the process. Forecast now, how do I get to where I'm forecasted, the practical steps that needs to be done. I think that's where we are dragging our feet. But also this is very important if you're talking about, if you're looking at what we discussed yesterday, also lifelong learning. I think lifelong learning, as you say, it's the same process. So as you move to, as you step to the different, stepping stones towards where we want to go, it is a journey of learning. Some we don't know, some we have an idea, others we are just swimming against the tide or with the tide. So and this is very important in revitalizing our work in organizing, in our education curriculum, and also in our CBA negotiation. We need to change the way we are doing things. So mine is just a comment to just tell you it is reinforcing the discussions that have been going on the past 3 days.
Thank you, Caroline. I will move over to Naomi. Then after Naomi, I've also seen that Brother Eric Manzi from the ITUC Africa is still with us. Let us also hear from ITUC Africa, how does this fit in the overall strategic planning of the ITUC, particularly planning for a future that is very, very uncertain, planning to address or to confront complex problems that do not require a technical solution. After Brother Manzi, I will also invite the Brother Omar Farouk in your capacity as the HACTU representative today to also maybe give us your reflections. Then I will open for the next round. I have to pick people to speak because I'm sure some of us are still processing and reflecting. So Naomi for 2 minutes, followed by Brother Eric Manzi, then Brother Omar Farouk, in that order.
Hello, good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
All right, thank you very much. I'm glad to be part of this, and I'm happy to learn quite also a lot. My apologies, I came in late because I was having some technical challenges. I came in when Tom was talking about I think the last 3-4 slides, where he was talking about looking at the future, working from the future we want, looking backwards. And I think the two that he shared, the one that I had an opportunity to listen to, I think it's something that we as trade unions need to embrace, especially looking at the challenges that we have been highlighting for the past 2 days, intersecting with the need to revitalize as trade unions. I think what is important now with technology that is coming in is to see how we can really implement models that use or that take advantage of the technological spaces and opportunities that are being created. For example, like what my sister Caroline has said, that already the employers do work with these kind of scenarios, working, looking at the future and working backwards to the present. And we also need to do that as trade unions. I think when we look at the role of education and the training, I think we cannot afford not to use this type of futuristic scenario planning, so that we are not left behind in terms of what is happening and the changes that are happening in the workforce. What I think is critical also is that even collective bargaining models, we really need to integrate and to harness, embrace technology that we have. Even when we are looking at how we can mobilize the new forms of work that are coming in with platform work, I think there is so much scope for us to embrace the scenarios that have been highlighted. And I think it really needs collaborative efforts. Employers are collaborating, governments are collaborating, and as trade unions, we also need to collaborate and have partnerships, even within the scope or the frame of technology, how to harness technology. So I think this is a very good platform where we are learning more and new meaningful ways of revitalizing ourselves, and also looking at how to reach out to those that would have never had participated in trade unions the youths, those who are disabled. And I think education and training has a huge role to play, even in training all these scenarios. How can we distill these scenarios that have been presented to a local level, to a trade union, a environment, at whether national or at sectoral or at workplace level. So I think there is so much that we can do, and I'm looking forward to be working on these and exploring more ways of how we can be effective in the changing nature of work and emerging new work arrangements which need us to fight for decent work. Thank you very much. That's what I can say for now.
Thank you, Naomi. Brother Eric Manzi, are you ready? How do you see this fitting in the work of the ITUC Africa? Brother Eric Manzi, I see your microphone is still on mute. Okay, maybe while we are waiting for Brother Manzi, we were also expecting Brother Omar Farouk to weigh in 2 minutes. What is your reflection? How does this tool fit into the work of HACTU in assisting the trade unions in the Horn of Africa to revitalize? Brother Farouk, your microphone is still on mute. Okay, Tom, let me get back to you. You were going to carry on by giving us some best practices. Maybe let's go into that session.
Yep. Yeah, what I wanted to do is share some lessons learned. I mean, from the 5 years that we have now been applying Foresight. It's some practical advice. It's nothing theoretical. These are just some things that we wanted to share with you that you also need to take into account. The first one, when you invest in your futures, do it with a sense of purpose, because you need to be very concrete about what you want. What do you want to create for the future? What kind of difference do you want to make? When we think about future, sometimes it's too general. You know, the future of trade union, you know, exactly what are you standing for? What do you want to see as a kind of change? So this is important that this purpose is very clear, because then you can also mobilize, let's say, your people around it so that they fully basically understand it, you know. And so this is like one thing that is extremely important before you basically start. The second one is to really target very carefully, because what is it that you would like to see changing? Is it about policy recommendations? Is it about legislative law? Is it about shift in perspective among your constituents? Is it about transformative action? So really try to identify the question that you want to get answered already long time before, because also there I see too many abstract starting points. Make it very clear and concrete, because that's what people really understand. Another thing that I found very important, we think about the future, but the first law of foresight and future science is, when you want to look at the future, you need to look twice as back into the history. So when I want to look 20 years from now in the future, I need at least to look 40 years back in what happened before me. When we did Foresight in the Centenary initiative, I found it from the ILO. I found it quite interesting to look back at the 100 years of history and look to what kind of patterns, what actually happens out there, to also use these elements to reflect about the future.
Tom,
Yes.
Naomi, please mute your microphone. Naomi and other participants, yeah, thank you. You can go ahead, Tom.
Yep, that was microphone probably open out there. So you need to look back twice as far as you look forward, because history is equally as important as the future, so that you also can learn from that. And the thing is, yeah, the future we cannot predict because we don't know what is going to come, but the history, that's where we really can learn from. So that's also a quite important thing. One of the Foresight methodologies is what we call the history walk. Before we start a Foresight lab, we look at the last 20 or 30 years of what has changed into an organization before we start to look further. Also, when you, as you said, it's companies are already using it, organizations are using it. It's not new. It's something that is already out there. So watch out not to reinvent the entire wheel. In the resources that I will share, I've seen some Foresight exercises within trade unions, you know, from different things. There are already publications. There are already laboratories that were done. So back, borrow, steal, and recycle. That's what Picasso, the artist, would do. So don't have to start from scratch here. They don't need to be built from zero. And as I said, what you were doing is already a way of foresight. When you were diving into these 4 scenarios, that's already, you know, a starting point that you can use. You don't need to start from scratch here. So that would be also one. One of the most important ones was for me is use new lenses, because in Violeta rightly says, like the quote that I used in the beginning, when we look at it like we have always looked, we also probably will have also similar results. So it's very important that when you do these foresight exercises, that you involve not only the ones who already think alike, but maybe also the other positions in there, you know, like the other perspectives, to fully understand how change could basically happen. And the most successful foresight exercises were done with the most diverse groups. The one we did in North Africa was actually a combination of all stakeholders, not only tripartite partners, but also civil society. We had different experts in there. It was a really diverse group, and it helped us to get a bit more comprehensive picture of what we wanted to do. Another one which I found very important is that, I mean, we have very daily busy jobs. We are doing all kinds of things. And then they ask, oh, on top of that, you need to do foresight. So for my teams, it was important to create a bit of separate time and space for that futures thinking, because in our day-to-day daily modes, we are absorbed in many different things. So it's not maybe the best environment to then step out and to do thinking. So we need to create time and space for that, maybe also in a conducive environment where you would bring those groups to get them into also a different state of mind. And when we started 5 years ago, we started with a few network of really champions, people that already, you know, heard about it, they were motivated about it, and that was our nuclear, that was our, let's say, our small group of champions that were then multiplying by spreading their inspiration, spreading their seeds of change. And gradually it became a bigger group. And now foresight is not seen anymore as a kind of a tool, but it's a kind of a mindset. And a mindset is very close to, let's say, the underlying values that we do, because everything what we do, we want to do it based upon social dialogue, based about principles such as equity, based upon principles of inclusion and diversity. So this is why we said these methods should be part of our DNA, so that when we address a challenge, we immediately do it in the right way, but really with a focus on a future, and a future which is hopefully more, let's say, equitable and more inclusive than it was already. And it's needed at these stages specifically, because when we have heard it, you know, there's a trend of rising inequalities throughout, let's say, the whole COVID disaster that we have had. So it's also a very timely method to basically start to work with, because now everybody's saying that there's so many uncertainties. Can we get a little bit of guidance to look into the future, so that we basically not you know, wait and react? What I find the beauty of foresight is not just reacting, but it's really proactively engaging. Maybe going back to Abraham Lincoln, he said the best way to predict the future is to create it. And maybe also to counterbalance that quote with, again, Mr. Einstein. He said, well, experience is when you start to do it, the experience you have is the hardest kind of teacher. It gives you the test first and the lesson afterward. These lessons that I have shared with you right now, it's based upon 5 years of experimenting where some very nice things came out, but also some failures. And when I talk about failures, I always refer to the Museum of Failure. This is based in Stockholm. If you ever have the possibility to go to Sweden, go and visit this museum. It's the biggest collection of all world failures, but it's an extremely interesting museum because you learn quite a lot. So failure is seen in a different context. It's seen as fail is seen as an abbreviation of FAIL, which basically means it's the first attempt in learning. And that would be my, let's say, final conclusion also of some of the lessons that we have learned here throughout the active application of Foresight. So these were just a few other reflections that I wanted to share with you. Over to you, Inviolata.
Thank you very much. I will also read some comments from the chat from organizations that are appreciating these tools and how useful they can be in revitalization and renewing their organizations. But before that, I would also want to invite Measho. He is from Setu, Ethiopia. I want you to weigh in and give us your reflections on how you see this theory of foresight thinking, scenario planning, fitting into the strategies and the operations of Setu in Ethiopia. 1 minute. After Measho, not now. After Measho, I will invite Yazid. How do you see this fitting into the work of NOTU at national level? And if there's somebody who is coming from a sectorial organization, can they also show their virtual hand so that they also in 1 minute see how this can fit at the level of work that they are operating in, given the structures of our unions? Okay. The Executive Secretary of SATUC, the Southern Africa Trade Union Coordinating Council, is with us, and she is Madame Mavis, is posted in the chat her greetings, and she's also appreciating that this is quite insightful, the presentation by Tom. Foresight is something that SATUC would use to also revitalize the work of SATUC at sub-regional level, including the operational activities of SATUC affiliates. And thank you, Madam Mavis, SATUC Executive Secretary, for joining us. Then I move to Measho, 1 minute, then Yazidi in 1 minute, then we can go into the wrapping up of the session after this.
Thank you, Sister Involata. And thank you, dear presenter, Mr. Tommy, for giving us very important foresighting for our trade unions. Yesterday, I was trying to share Setu's future intervention. Yes, it is very, very difficult for trade unions. The future is difficult. It needs new thinking. It needs to depend on new technology. That is why my organization Setu is trying to introduce a new service delivery program at the National Center. We are developing with in collaboration or in financial assistance with Frederick Everett Staff Tank, a workers platform. This workers platform is mainly 2 packages: mobile application, at the same time web active website. So mainly this is targeting the informal sectors, the youth and women. We want to deliver our service to the youth, women, and the informal sector, easily accessible. Most of our youngsters, the youngsters that are joining to the economy of my country, are using what you call a phone. That is, they are using Facebook. So we are trying to create user-friendly service delivering, and we want to recruit the workers. So we need to revitalize our service or to re-innovate our service. We need to support our service by technology in order to address the massive potential of trade union. Our membership is less than 1 million currently, but our potential is 5 to 6 million. So to be accessible and to organize more, we need to use technology. By the way, in the last 5 years, we were achieving double our membership. And last week, we were in out of Addis for discussing the first draft of strategic plan for the next 5 years. And our plan is to attain double our membership. That means we want to make our membership, potential paid membership, to more than around 2 million. So this will assisted by the new service delivery, that is the workers platform. So I agree with the new thinking on trade union that you mentioned, Brother Komi, and thank you, Mr. Cesar Imolata.
Thank you very much, Measho. Yazid, are you there? Before I invite Brother Manzi, in 1 minute.
I'm there. Thank you very much for the opportunity to talk again. I agree with the new thinking, but the major issue is that we have the membership, which is not stable. Mm-hmm. We want to see how to maintain this membership. I remember one time I participated in a study entitled Trade Union Services and Benefits in Africa, where we discovered that our trade unions have insisted on the traditional system of servicing members. Yet the current membership needs modern ways of servicing them. For example, we have the informal sector. They will ask you, what do we gain from trade union? If you are telling them that I'm going to bargain for you, somebody in the informal sector doesn't want a collective bargaining. He wants a tangible benefit. If my car gets an accident, will you help me to buy another one? If my border, I mean a motorcycle, gets a problem, will you assist me to acquire a motorcycle? Is the union putting a fund aside which can help these people to get something to remain on the road? If I'm in the market and the market gets a fire, will you help me to get a restart capital? So those are the challenges which we are now facing in the new normal of organizing the informal sector. They are not looking at, we say we are negotiating for you to get a vending place. But a vending place may get a problem. If it gets a problem, where will I get a startup capital? You are bargained for us to get parks in cities to park our cars and wait for passengers. But these cars get problems on the road. When it gets a problem, are you helping me to get another car? Are you helping me to get another motorcycle? So those are the new challenges we are now facing in the new normal of organizing the informal sector. The same applies also to the formal sector. The formal sector has turned into casual employment. So these people are having jobs on contract of 6 months, 4 months. So the 4 months, this person is employed, but the next 10 months is not employed. So which services are we generating to help this person who is ever in employment for 4 months? After 4 months, he has unemployment for 5 months. Which services do we have for that person? So I'm in agreement with the facilitator that we need to change. We have to look for different mechanisms of servicing our membership, not looking at only the old mechanism of collective bargaining and representation. It is no longer enough to service our membership. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I will move to Brother Manzi. Then after Brother Manzi, I see that our colleague Wafa, who is responsible for ACTRAV in the North Africa and partly Arab region, has joined. In 1 minute, Wafa, in the seminars that you have organized with the Arab region on the same topic, how has this topic on future planning and scenario thinking been embraced by your constituencies in the North Africa and Arab region? You will speak after Brother Mansi. Brother Mansi, in 2 minutes, please, so that we wrap up the session.
Yes, good morning, Violetta. Thank you to give me the floor. Good morning, comrades. Okay, I'm sorry when you gave me the floor, I was driving. But now what I can say at this stage is I agree with many of intervenants about the needs to revitalize the trade movement. And I think since when we discussed in ILO about the future of work, then after when we adopt the ILO Centenary Declaration, when we discuss internally in ITUC about the new social contract, you have many things which showed us that the trade movement must change the way to work. So it's not we can discuss on it. It's clear. And also in ITUC Africa, we are already committed, as I presented yesterday. But probably maybe the problem was, when we decided during our last Congress in 2019, but because of the situation of pandemic, it stopped what I say, the dynamics, as to see how to discuss with our affiliates in terms of to see how to change the way we are working actually. But I'm sure that when the situation can be a little bit normal, we can start that movement. And I think I am very happy to participate on that discussion. And if it could be organized in the other region like Western Africa and Central Africa, we continue to follow and to work with you in terms to see, because we need to revitalize the trade movement by many ways. The first maybe can be to reviewing the structure, to ideologically, to change the mindset of the trade unionists. Yes, we are the trade unionists. We have ideologically, we are what we're supposed to be, but we must be more open to work with other peoples. Like if you can work with some NGOs, some other academicians in terms of to create some network, in terms to be more efficient. We can understand why what my comrade Yazidi thought about to change. If you say we are going to negotiate, maybe we can change to adapt the way we can negotiate, comparing of the situation we are. That's, I think we have many things we can change. And one thing I can say now is, as a trade movement, actually, we are facing off in different countries. The governments are, the tendency is to be it's the economic liberalization. And in that way, as a trade union movement, we have a challenge to see how to deal with. We can go just to be against. No, it's not possible to be against now. No, is to see how to deal. Yes, we need to develop our countries. We need to introduce the economic liberalization in terms of to see how to can grow the economic, etc. But we have many things we need to change. And I agree with what Naomi said. We need to collaborate, everybody, even the ILO, the trade movement at continental level, the trade organization at sub-regional level, at country level, etc. We need to collaborate and to see how to change a way to work. That's maybe I can say at this stage, and we will continue that discussion and to assure you, and we are committed to work on it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Tom has actually underlined what you have said in your last words, that trade unions have been reacting to change instead of taking the initiative. And we are happy that you are also underscoring the fact that we need to take the lead. We need to be solutions providers and alternative thinkers. Wafa, in 2 minutes, then I will give the last opportunity to Omar Farouk in 1 minute. Then we give Tom 2 minutes to reflect, then we go to the next stage. Are you there, Wafa? Wafa, are you still there? I don't see her. Okay, I see her, but her microphone is off. Okay, Brother Farouk, in 2 minutes, please, not more than 2 minutes. How does this future foresight thinking fit into the work of the Horn of Africa and their affiliates?
Thank you very much, colleagues, and thank you, Sister Inviolata. I think business cannot be as usual. I agree with Tom and other colleagues what you have said, especially my brother Eric Manzi. We need to work in a different way. And when we say we need to work in a different way, it is we need to catch up with the difference issues that are happening. That's why to make our unions relevant, that's why our unions need to be servicing our members and addressing the changing needs. The needs have changed. The needs that we knew 10, 20 years back or 30 years, they are no longer the same needs. So we need to catch up and address those kind of issues. So from the Horn of Africa Confederation of Trade Unionism perspective, we believe that we have to be not like Tom said, that we should not be reactive. We should be proactive. We should be, taking the lead as agents of change. And that's why sometimes some NGOs are trying to fill in the space of the workers, because we have become reactive instead of becoming proactive. So we need to be proactive. Second is that we need to be having active policy engagement with regional economic communities, especially like IGAD or EAC, and play active role in engaging them. Because that is what is currently happening. The world, with all these things of globalization and all our approaches, the structure has been descended from African Union to regional economic communities like IGAD. So we need to engage them. And that's why we have been with IGAD in the middle of May and have had frank discussions, HAC2 and the Employers Organization, and we believe we can do a lot in engaging them. So active policy engagement, being proactive, and as well as addressing the changing needs of our members, and as well as their interests. It is not going to be business as usual. We get to change, we get to adopt it, and that's why in my federation in Somalia, we are doing different things. For the first time, we are engaged actively in the democratization process of Somalia. In the national elections that is going on, we have members in the electoral bodies. We have members in the voting delegates. So that we cannot continue the business of lamentation or being reactive. Tomorrow, when we get bad and crooked politicians in our parliaments who are frustrating the progressive labor laws, who are endangering workers, who are oppressing human rights, we cannot continue that business. So that's why we need to help and shape the future of our country and get involved in. And that is the why for us as trade unionists, we get to do business as usual, either in Somalia or in the Horn of Africa or the larger Eastern Africa region. The last thing I wanted to say is this kind of active policy engagement is very important, both at national level, local level, and as well as regional level. And that's why ILO can play a role in terms of helping. ILO has helped my federation in Somalia, and we have been very active in a number of places in terms of policy making. And that's why we can make a difference. The unionists should not just be regarded as just mere noisemakers. We are different than that. We are agents of change, and we make the changes inside. Over to you, colleagues.
Thank you very much for those reflections. I will hand over to Tom to give us his final reflections on the interventions that we have received so far. I'm also reassuring participants that the presentation will be available, including the links to some of the resources that Tom has shared with us during his presentation. I see also that since the discussion was open, more participants are joining. That's why I'm not minding the time now, so that we make use of what is remaining of this time. So Tom, over to you, but I also want to throw in one thing for your reflection, associating myself with the inputs by Yasiti, that while the trade unions are thinking about the future, but the future for trade unions is now. Our members want to enjoy those benefits now, increases in wages, decent working conditions, enjoyment of their rights. So when we are talking about the future, there's a slide where you talked about us planning for 2030, for 2050, for 2070. How do we reconcile the expectations of our members now and in the nearest future, not the futuristic that you portrayed in your slides? After your reflections, then we'll go into the closing remarks. So Caroline and Kabu, on behalf of the Director of ACTRAF, be on the standby. Over to you, Tom, your final parting shot.
Thanks a lot, in Violeta. And really, yeah, when I talk about long-term perspectives like 30, 50, 70, this is just in the exercise to get new and fresh insights, because we need to translate them to the now and here, because that's the reality that we are living in. But what I want to just avoid is that we are living in the present with a present mindset, but that we are living and working in the present with a future mindset, which could make direct change. So it's not long-term and waiting, it's that typical proactive attitude, which is extremely important. Maybe another thing that I've heard from a lot of the colleagues, we talk a lot about change. You know, this is extremely important, but take into account that there's one thing that is not changing, and that is basically the underlying value, you know, your mandate that has been as robust as it is. If we talk about the overall umbrella of social justice, that is the only thing that is not changing. That is really the driving force behind your work. So let me also change that. That's something that is not changing. That's also the underlying, let's say, values, because whatever we will do in this changing society, it will be in order to make sure that this leads to a more inclusive and a more fair society. So just wanted to highlight that, because there's at least some stability and some certainty in there, and that's really the driving force behind all your work. The last thing that I want to mention, apart from the acting now and being proactive, secondly, driven by, let's say, values that remain throughout all the change. The same is the last one. Still, it's maybe the way or the approach on how to basically get change done in function of the overall objectives. In order to get to that revitalization scenario, there may be a few more fresh perspectives might be needed. And in order to reach those fresh perspectives, I would invite you to, let's say, the resources that I will share with the team, and to basically already try some of these kind of conversations or these co-creation dialogues on some very concrete themes that you have been mentioned, whether it's on the membership issue, whether it's on the workers' voice, whether it's on, choose a team and try to apply already one of these methods to see what you get out of it, which new ideas would basically appear. Because this is also an interesting element that somebody mentioned. It's you have the space in these kind of webinars to do it, but then how to translate it into action when you're back in the field. This might be an important challenge. But as I said, do these dialogues and conversations within the field with your constituents together, because one of the advantages of these methodologies is that they're quite straightforward. They're based upon open dialogue. So it only requires a good, let's say, facilitator to get the people talk from different angles to each other. So that would be, let's say, three important elements that I would wanted to share with you. So keep on being proactive instead of reactive. Take these fresh perspectives driven by the same values that have been guided your practice in the past, let's say, years. So that's it. It was a pleasure to be here. Thank you, Inviolata, for inviting me here. And as I said, I will do a follow-up with providing you some of the resources and also the presentations that I have used. So over to you again.
Thank you very much, Tom. We really appreciate. Can we upload Tom through our virtual ways? Thumbs up, applause, or whichever you want to do it. This is information that was, it's complex, but you presented it in a way that it resonated with most of the issues that we are confronted with. And the discussion has also been very robust, insightful, meaning that we are already at the level where we are processing what this means for the future of trade unions. This is not the end. I'm sure we'll be inviting you in follow-up sessions after comrades have gone back to the drawing board and they will come back to the Learning Innovation Program with some more requests for assistance. And to the participants, I also want to appreciate your comments, your interventions, your reflections on the presentation that Tom has given to us. We will share the materials. And without further ado, if our interpreters can indulge us for the next 15 minutes, we are now going into the closing session. And I'm happy again that the numbers keep increasing. People want to see the end, not only the beginning. So, Sister Caroline, I'm giving you the floor to just inform us, the participants, in terms of where do we go next? We have been here for 3 days, 3 hours, listening to all these interventions. There were also some comments that were provided by the participants. We also saw that some organizations within the Horn of Africa are already in the process of revitalization. So where do we go from here? In your closing remarks, can you also give us some insights on what is coming up next?
Thank you very much, Sister Inviolata, and Tom, thank you very, very much. Please share with us your presentation so that we ensure everyone gets it. If you have also the French version of it, I would really appreciate. Thank you so much. I don't even know how to summarize all the rich discussions that have happened in the past 3 days. But one thing that is coming out clear is moving forward, union growth is key. How we are going to achieve that and how we are going to do it is all in the answer when you talk about revitalization. So we talked about union growth and particularly looking at organizing, new forms of organizing, diversity in organizing the young people, the women, and also how we do our organizing, embracing digital tools in organizing and also reviewing how we do our organizing in place of a pandemic like what is happening currently. But also the issue around trade union administration and management was largely discussed. And I think my director actually clearly brought it out as an area that they would like, or the ILO office would very much like to support. And this is a key element when you talk about revitalization. But the issue around diversity, and Dr. Omolo yesterday brought it quite clearly when we are talking about diversity in terms of integration and mainstreaming. And he said some of our unions already have those structures that are bringing in diversity already. We have women committee, we have youth committee. I know Uganda have a committee of people with disability. Zanzibar has a committee of people with disability. But how do we integrate and mainstream these groups into our day-to-day life and processes and activities? But also one key issue that we will be working on in terms of moving forward is the issue around internal democracy and governance. I think this was brought up over and over again in the opening remarks around issues of trade union in transition, and my two DGS, Manzi and Zunda also largely discussed this. So issue around internal democracy and trade union and internal democracy and governance is also an issue that we will be looking and working forward. Digitalization is also key, and Tom has also talked about it in terms of forecasting, in terms of our services, in terms of how we use the new digital tools to move forward. Research and education are also areas that we will be focusing on. But also I think one of the clarion call was we have done a lot of research. I think it's now time to go back to these researches that we've done, look at what were the findings of the researches and how can we start implementing those findings from our national centers, and how can these research findings shape the kind of education that we want to put across, and in terms of sustaining, the education that we have. The issue around cooperation and solidarity, and we should start by acting. I think our comrade from Sudan made a presentation. Please support our comrades from Sudan in terms of solidarity with the Sudan Workers Federation. ITUC have a template, a solidarity letter that you can send out. If you don't have one, please let us know. We can share with you. Please, they say an injury to one is an injury to all. Not just Sudan, but also in the Southern Africa. Let's support our union in Swaziland in terms of what they are going to. Those are the kind of issues we were talking about. Trade union revitalizing, not being marginalized and building better. But last but not least, I think the other issue we discussed is the issue of human and financial sustainability. So as we talk about moving forward, building better revitalization, we can't do this when we do not have the human resource and the financial resources to be able to push the agenda of revitalization. But also just some area to pick up on I think it's important for us to document the best, I think we've had a few of the participants share what they are doing. I think it's in Violata, Naomi, if you could support us, if the center could support us in terms of seeing how we can, document, because it's also nice to learn on what other people are doing so that you don't reinvent the wheel. But also the issue around, let me see. I think I've finished. So in Violata, just moving forward, these are some of the key areas that we'll be focusing on. And I'm glad to see some of our cooperating partners have been here, particularly DTA and ELO Norway. And if you know these two organizations, for those who are wondering, is what used to be called LOFTF, our Danish partners, and ELO Norway. These two organizations, particularly in East Africa, they have supported a lot of activities on revitalization, and particularly in organizing the informal economy. And for East Africa and ETU particularly the issue around strengthening social dialogue, because it was one of the key pillars in revitalization. It came out in the director Maria Elena's speech. In the two governing body members also talked about strengthening of social dialogue. ELO Norway and DTA have been on the forefront to support strengthening of social dialogue in East Africa. So we would like to thank our brother Lisungu for representing our Danish comrades, and our sister Alice and brother Ruben for supporting us. But also to thank Mavis for coming through. Thank you very much. We've talked about solidarity, trade union unity, ITUC and SATUC. It's very important for us to continue working together, just the same way we are working with HACTU. It is also important in Violata at a later stage to see if we can bring together all the sub-regionals and the regional organization to see after we've completed all the conferences, because these seminars have been happening in all the sub-regions, South Africa, East Africa, North Africa, I think the West African one and the Central African one are yet to be done. Once you conclude, I think it's also important for us, the sub-regionals, HACTUC, ITUC, SATUC, or OTUA, OSTAC, and the Northern one to sit together and see how can we practically move forward from our different regions. Also to thank our director, Wellington. I think he said he's leaving. He's been here all the 3 days, so we really want to thank him. And also our director, Msindo, who was here the first day, but he's also on holiday, so we understand that he's on leave. I would also like to, thank our participants from our national centers, my summit members. I can see Brother Kamisi is around. I can see some of the committee of experts are here. Thank you very much for ensuring that all the national centers have been represented. But also very, very importantly, to thank our regional organization, ITUC and OATU. They are also central to ensuring that we come up with a regional trade union roadmap, as Tom Wambeke has done to revitalization. I think this will also be key to help up some of those unions that are really struggling. And also, last but not least, thank our interpreters for making this possible. If you think they did an awesome job, please don't hesitate to get their contacts from us. We are now in the virtual world. Whether you are in Burundi or Rwanda or Turin, they can still do the interpretation for you. I will leave just 3 minutes for Farouk to give just some closing remark on behalf of HAP2, since I still haven't seen follow. And then Kabo can officially close the meeting.
Is Farouk around?
Yes, his microphone is still off. Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much, brothers and sisters. And I wanted to express our profound appreciation to our colleagues in Iowa Traf, our sister Carol in ETUC and her team. Of course, our directors, Alexia Musindo and Wellington Chipepe. And I'm not going to forget my good brother, the Deputy General Secretary of ITUC Africa, Comrade Eric Manzi, as well as our interpreters for being with us in these important discussions of the trade unions in transition. Like we have had in the Franklin discussion, presentations which are genuine, of course, when it comes to the question of where our unions stand, where our regional organizations do stand, and where we are going to move. It's very clear that we have a lot of things to do. Our region is a region which has a lot of challenges, a lot of issues to be addressed. And there are peace, there are conflict, crisis caused by the climate, the COVID problem that is now bringing us virtually. All this kind of challenges is something that needs our collective focus, and we have to put our hands together. We are one family. We get to address our own issues in a collective manner. I also wanted to express our appreciation to our colleagues in ITC, International Training Center in Turin, and Sister Violata, Tom, and other comrades who are with us. Thank you very much for always the support. It's not easy sometimes to get things done, virtually, but it's something that we have tried. I want to assure that from HAP2 leadership position, that we are committed for solidarity and cooperation with our brothers and sisters in ETUC, because we are in the same region. We come from same background of the union movement, and we need to tackle our common issues and our common challenges together. And of course, we have to work in a way that will complement each other, that will enhance our cooperation, and of course, building our strength, that we are people that are united for common cause. I want to say that, and for us, I want to assure our colleagues in ACTRAF, in the wider Ireland family, that HAP2 is committed for making sure that the dynamism, the activism that is required from our region, and the coordination for our affiliates, for the working people of the region are secured, and we will do our best. So I want to again to express appreciation, especially to also Carol and her staff for trying to organize this logistical arrangement with regard to this event. Thank you very much, sisters and brothers. We are together, we are on this journey, and we need to make the necessary changes that we must do as working people in this organization. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Brother Kabu, over to you.
Thank you very much, Sister Inviolata, for giving me the floor. There is an echo. Can we? Yes. I am stepping in on behalf of my senior colleague, Dr. Mohammed Wamazingo, who was supposed to close this workshop on behalf of the director of ACTRAV. But as all of us are aware, he has been challenged by an emergent situation, so he's unavoidably absent. On behalf of the director of ACTRAV, I would like to thank all of you for your time and commitment in making this 3-day seminar a great success. In particular, I would like to express ACTRAV's gratitude to all the resource persons or facilitators who provided insights and guided us through all the thematic sessions. The discussions have been very enriching, and based on your deeper reflections on the issues discussed over the past 3 days, it is clear that the trade union movement is facing an imminent threat of marginalization, dualization, and replacement. And this requires urgent need to revitalize the trade union movement. The revitalization will require, as already said by various speakers, the need to redouble efforts in increasing the membership density of the trade union movement. And this has to be done through pragmatic ways, by ensuring that you reach out to the unorganized workers, including those that are in the informal economy, in the rural economy, those that are trapped in precarious employment relationships, migrant workers, women workers, young workers, casual workers, part-time workers, seasonal workers, workers in the gig economy. You need to open up the doors of the trade union movement wide to embrace all categories of workers. They all need your protection. And to do this, as you said many times, you need to improve on service delivery to address the needs of all. Not many could actually have a situation of benefiting from wage bargaining because they are not wage earners. They may be income earners. Their own needs may be quite different. And therefore, you have to think outside the box to also attend to their own needs. There are many tools available or at your disposal. If I reflect on the achievement in terms of the development of tools by the ILO to guide you in this process, we have to look at Recommendation 200 that addresses the issue of HIV and AIDS. Recommendation 202 on social protection floor for all. Recommendation 204, transition from informal to formal economy. And recommendation 205 on job for peace and resilience. There are so many other tools, including the ILO Centenary Declaration, and also the recent tool developed to address the whole challenge of COVID-19. These are tools that can guide us. And equally, some of you have already indicated that even within your own thinking, you have been imaginative in putting in place what you call the workers' platform. I'm aware of the developments here in Ethiopia, also in Kenya and in Somalia, as well as in Uganda. We want the others to emulate these good examples so that you can broaden your scope of service delivery. This can help to improve the image of the trade union movement to remain relevant and attractive to all categories of workers, in particular the unorganized and the underrepresented groups, women and young workers. That is very, very important. Also, the issue of internal democracy and improving on communication is very, very vital. Let us endeavor to safeguard the trade union movement as one that is born out of democratic principles, whose operations is based on legitimacy and representativeness as well as independence. Very, very important to make sure that you open up the space for members to participate. And in that respect, for even activities as collective bargaining, let us make sure that it is rendered democratic. Before you go to the boardroom, it is important for you to interface with your members to ask them about their felt needs, to inform the demand basket that will be presented for negotiations, and to also make sure that you take them along at every stage of that process. You need to encourage broader membership participation and control over the day-to-day operations of the trade union movement, and to expand the network among all cadres. And very importantly, for the movement to be proactive rather than reactive. Like it was said, you should be solution provider and also provider of alternatives, and remain the agent of change. I think these are very vital issues that we are eloquently expressed at every stage of this 3-day seminar. Coalition building is very important, but here I think we need to be guided. It has to be based on strategic alliances. You remain in that alliance in as so much as it is based on your core values. Where there are attempts to deviate, you can shiver the relationship. But it is important to recognize the like-minded organizations that you can work with. Very, very important. Build partnerships, not only to rely on the ILO. There are many other actors today in our countries that we can work with, within the UN family, and more in the broader context of your role in the implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals, which is very, very important. We want you to engage effectively because that is the entry point for you to bring about change that can impact on the life of your members and also the wider society. You need to engage effectively in the policy debate in terms of your input towards the national development plans, as well as the United Nations Sustainable Development Cooperation process, which always starts with first the common country analysis process. We want you to actively engage and also contribute towards the development of the Decent Work Country program and ensure its alignment with both the cooperation framework and the national policy plans. That is very important. For us to succeed and for you to succeed, it is critical that we engage effectively in resource mobilization. That is very vital. And to conclude, I would like to also underline the importance of research and education. Everything today we do has to be based on facts and figures. We want you to also dedicate your time. Those of you who have the resources to create the research department. For those who may not, to appoint focal points that can also guide you in this. And invest more in also the education of your members. What I can say is that you can always count on the ILO and ACTRAB in particular in terms of support to guide you through this. Like it was said by Tom, to invest is important. You need to invest in the future of the trade union movement, but with a sense of purpose. And that purpose should be well targeted. That is very, very important for you to be guided. You have to be strategic at every stage of the process and make sure that you safeguard the interest of your members in terms of ensuring that they benefit from the gains of production. We want to encourage you to remain steadfast in your agitation in realizing what we can call distributive justice. Improve wages, improve social protection coverage for all are important tools that can help you build the middle class. And that middle class building process ultimately will also bring stability in our respective countries. I want to thank all of you, in particular, the leadership of the East African Trade Union Confederation and the Horn of Africa Confederation of Trade Union for committing yourself to this process. This is a journey, and it is a journey that we have to continue on with. I want to give you the assurance in my capacity as the actual representative for this region that our commitment in terms of aiding your effort in influencing the policy dynamics will remain sacrosanct. We will aid you in the preparation of advocacy papers to make sure that you are always in the driving seat wherever you are given the opportunity, particularly within the framework of the United Nations Sustainable Development Cooperation Framework. We want to make sure, like Tom said, fail, first attempt in learning, for you to always know that every step on the way should be seen as a learning process for you, but to avoid making a repetition of mistakes. We want to guide you through that, and you can count on me and other ACTRAV specialists and other ILO specialists and colleagues in seeing you through this tedious journey. It is a journey worth realizing, because if we fail in the journey, it is the whole society that will fail. The trade union movement, you are the only critical mass that we can rely on today to bring about transformation. In fact, I want to remind you of the historical role that you played in the fight towards the liberation of Africa. The trade union movement was part of the nationalist movement. You were also part of the struggle when the structural adjustment program was unleashed on Africa. And you should remain also part of the struggle in realizing the sustainable development goals, and also the African Union Agenda 2063. And of course, the mandate of the ILO. You have to deliver on that. With those few comments, on behalf of the director of ACTRA, Madam Maria Elena Andre, I want to thank all of you, Sister Gala, for your devotion, input all, Sister Inviolata, my colleague, indeed, for your pioneering effort in putting this training together. I think what we have also learned is that together we can make a difference. Together we can succeed. And teamwork is the ultimate. That is why in ACTRAF today, what we have done is to make sure we work as a team. We are all organized in clusters. And the cluster approach, which is a team approach, has helped us tremendously. Training for ACTRAF is delivered by the training arm of ACTRAF, which is the program, the workers program in Turin. Those of us in the field, we can assist that process, but ultimately our own core focus is to provide technical services or advice to our respective, constituents that we are assigned to service. And I think we are doing that with the best of our ability. With those few comments, also recognizing the presence of our country directors, my director, Wellington Chibebe, country director for ILO Coda es Salam, Alexio Musindio, country director for Co-Addis Ababa, and Eric, with us during the opening, but I think he will still get the message since Wafa is with us. We are very proud for the fact that all of you have provided leadership to all of us throughout this journey. So with that, on behalf of all of you and on behalf of Director Maria Elena, I want to thank you all and to say that this is just the beginning of the process. What we want to see is change in the lives of the working people of East Africa and Africa at large. And this journey must continue in the boardrooms, must continue in the streets, must continue everywhere until we achieve the goal in terms of bringing about quality life for the people of East Africa and Africa at large. With those few remarks, I want to thank all of you and to wish you a happy weekend ahead and to bring the meeting to a formal close. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye, colleagues. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Stay safe.
Thank you, Caroline. Thank you.
Thank you, Kabu. Thank you. Thank you, Tom. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mavis.
Thank you, brother Yusuf. Thank you. We will talk later.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Indio, Sister Caroline.
Thank you, Naomi.
Thank you.
Bye, Brother Yusuf.
Thank you.
Thank you. Barbara,
Bye, Amina.
David, how are you?
Bye, Neshimwe. Yes, Brother Yusuf.
Thank you, Caroline. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Tamam.
Yes, I appreciate your support to our.
You.
Thank you, brother.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, brothers and sisters.
Shukran, Brother Kamisi.
Thank you.
My boss, Thomas Kongoi. Nashimie. C'est bon. Bonjour. Merci. Amina. Thank you. Bye, everyone.